So, Dan.
Hi.
I have a fun thing.
Okay.
You're going to love this.
I am excited.
It's not a bad story idea, but it's bad story idea adjacent.
Okay.
A couple weeks ago, I was asleep and dreaming. Okay?
Very
As
good.
one does, I was dreaming. And during the dream, I was observing beta readers reading one of my books. And it was weird because it wasn't a writing group, it was the actual beta readers, but they were sitting and talking about it and giving feedback, and they didn't know I was there. And I was like, oh man, this book needs so much work. And I spent like the next time like dozing in and out in the morning, fixing this book by inventing a brand new backstory for the villain to make him more interesting and sympathetic and making, fixing all the problems, and then woke up and there was no book. Like I had never
this is not a book you've written.
Not a book I've written, not a book I have ever had an idea for. I don't even know what the book was. When I woke up, all I knew was that they had complained about the villain, so I made up a backstory for the villain and planned out when I was going to write all of this and fix the book and kind of had that whole mental thing where you're like, no, I'm going to have to fix this. This is so much work. I wish I had done this right the first time. And constructed all of that, sat up, and said, but there's no book. And then my next thought was, Dan's going to find this hilarious. I'm going to tell him on the podcast.
Yeah, I am so excited for this. Do I get to hear what the villain's backstory is?
No, because I forgot it because it was dull dreaming stuff. And it sounded dumb when I thought about it. I'm like, what? It was just basic stuff, right? It's like, I have to make sure he has a family and stuff. Like, anyway, it was like I did all this work to wake up and find out it was for a book that didn't exist.
That's my least favorite kind of dream, is just when you spend it going through your day. You got to do stuff. You got to come to work. You got to wash the dishes. And then you wake up and we're like, really?
Yeah.
Now I have to do it again?
Yeah.
Well.
Do you ever have like writing dreams? Because I don't usually, but this was an interesting side note to writing.
No, but the nature of some of the meds that I'm on, I take trazodone every night to sleep.
So does my son.
Makes dreams more vivid and more memorable.
Oh, okay.
And so off the top of my head right now, I can't remember any of them, except that I 2 nights ago had a dream that my friend Madi, who's a pro GM that I work with, I dreamed that I met her biological mom, and it was Molly Ringwald.
Oh, hey.
So that I remember.
Nice.
Yeah. Most of the time, like, it's a good reason that we forget dreams because they're stupid. But
people like, do you get story ideas from dreams? And very rarely, once in a while, I feel like I do. And I wake up and I'm like, that's going to be the best story. And then I sit and I think about it. I'm like, no, my brain is not fully functional when I am dreaming.
Yeah.
That's not a good story.
Like, this does not hold water at all.
They are not good stories. The dream stories don't. Yeah.
I actually have on my phone here, I used to write down my dreams every time I woke up in the morning, and you're in one of them.
Ooh.
Do you want to hear about it?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I'm scared.
Let me find the Brandon one. Oh, okay. So I have no idea how interesting this is, but it says, I went with Brandon and some of our friends to a nice cabin to play Magic. My brother Rob had given me a big metal box, dark red, labeled Wardens, which was some kind of magic thing, and had a few cards in it. He'd gotten it free somewhere and kept some of the stuff in it, but didn't want these last bits. We did a draft of a new set, and afterward, Eric Ehlers, you remember him?
Yes, I do. I remember him well.
He and I argued about how to divide up the cards. I wanted to do it randomly. He wanted to curate piles of cards that worked well together. He said he didn't want it, for example, give someone the card Inflict Agony if the other cards couldn't use it. I said that makes no sense because you could just take Inflict Agony out of a deck if you didn't want it. I tossed Inflict Agony and one other card into the closet to make my point. I think there were 6 of us, but I'm not sure. Eventually, I realized that though we were dividing up the cards to take home, and Eric thought we were dividing up the cards to play another round right then. By this time, it was 2 a.m., so I said I couldn't play again till the next day anyway, and he was welcome to divide the cards any way he wanted. I pulled the 2 cards out of the closet, and while I was reaching in there, I found a little stack of 12 or so cards that had come in the Warden's box. There were all dark red foils labeled Warden that cost 0 to play. Each one had a character portrait of a different warden and some minor ability, and they were part of some new limited edition mechanic and were rare and valuable. Brandon's room was right across from mine and had no doors, and I was worried about privacy, and then I woke up.
Okay.
Yeah, so there you go. I write these down, but that doesn't mean that they are interesting.
Okay. I mean, dreams are a thing, man. I find them so fascinating and so useless all at once.
Yeah. Like, what part of my brain was really concerned with inventing new limited edition magic mechanics?
I mean, not inventing, finding expensive cards in the closet that you thought you had lost. Suddenly it's just free money. I mean, 0 casting cost cards historically in Magic are pretty broken, so I can imagine how those would be pretty valuable.
That's true. Well, there you go.
There we are.
Hey, speaking of dreams, guess what we want to talk about this week?
So I don't have to guess because I pitched it to you about 5 minutes ago.
That's true. We're going to talk about cryptids. I'm wearing my Gone Squatchin' Bigfoot shirt. I found this on Father's Day. I was traveling. We were on a big road trip, and we stopped at a truck stop in Idaho, and I saw this shirt, and I pointed at my son and said, "That's what I want for Father's Day."
And he got it.
He bought me the Gone Squatchin' Sasquatch shirt.
It is a nice shirt.
Yeah.
So I thought we would rank the various cryptids based on how much we think they actually exist, scale of 1 to 10, and how much we wish they did, scale of 1 to 10. I think that will be fun.
Cool. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the Wikipedia list of cryptids potentially twice. I'm going to go through and just kind of curate the famous ones that we've all heard of.
The famous ones and then go back for...
And then if there's time, we'll go back and we'll talk about this giant otter thing from Ireland.
Okay.
So the way that they have them in order is aquatic one first, so Loch Ness Monster.
Loch Ness Monster. I mean, the classic, right? My kids were talking about the Loch Ness Monster recently. This is the one cryptid that I can remember in my life believing existed. As a younger man, much younger man.
I
remember
second grade.
Yeah, reading a story about how it was framed as a news article, but probably wasn't, of how they thought there was a hidden channel between the loch and the ocean, which impossible.
Underground tunnel
underground
or something.
Tunnel, so that this and that that long ago some plesiosaurs had gotten in there and gotten trapped, and Nessie could get in and out. And that's why they couldn't find Nessie with sonar, because Nessie was obviously out. That's how Nessie got enough food to eat, was, heading out to the ocean.
Leaving, coming back.
Coming back, and things like that. And so how likely is Nessie to exist? This is a 1. This is a 1 out of 10 for me, right?
Yeah.
Sonar exists. It's a relatively small area to search. How much do I want to exist? I don't think we're going to have as much disparity because this is a 10. I wish there were a dinosaur living in Scotland.
Right.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Don't at me. I know plesiosaurs aren't dinosaurs. Right. I wish that we would find a dinosaur. And
I think plesiosaurs are dinosaurs in the same way a spider is a bug.
Exactly.
It is a convenient label to use.
Yeah.
That whether it is...
So you agree, bug should refer to small little creepy thing.
Yeah,
crawly
it does.
thing, right?
In common usage, that is exactly what it refers to.
Bug should not mean insect. Insect, you can have your scientific term.
Yeah. If we get hung up on the difference between a bug and an insect or a bug and an arachnid, bug just means little creepy thing.
Yeah.
Dinosaur means ancient non-mammal.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I don't know that I call a megalodon a dinosaur.
Well, that's the next one on the list is megalodon.
Okay, so, it is? Okay.
Yeah, because there are theories that there are surviving populations of megalodons somewhere in the ocean.
Okay, so I'm going to go with for Megalodon. What you have to give us your Nessie.
My Nessie?
Yeah.
No, I'm with you on Nessie. There's
1 in
not
10?
a single chance
Yeah.
that it is real, but I would love it to be real. It is interesting to me that of all the cryptids,
Yeah.
why is Loch Ness Monster arguably the most famous one? And I think it's because it's the coolest one.
It just is. And, Scotland is cool.
Mhm.
So, where some of these, it's going to be like, they're from New Jersey. And we're like, oh,
Like, yeah,
I
they can
love
have
you,
their
New Jersey, but you're no
cryptid, I
Scotland.
guess.
And so, yeah. All right. So Megalodon. Number one, Megalodon, dinosaur or not?
I mean, I suppose by the taxonomy that I just now proposed, it has to be, but I don't really consider it a dinosaur.
I
But that's because sharks themselves are extremely ancient creatures. Like, even the ones that are alive today that we know are real, they are from, specific genuses and families so ancient that they're older than all kinds of things that we take for granted.
Just in case Dean is listening, my friend wrote the movie The Meg.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Dean Georgeras. He's a good friend from Hollywood. He actually wrote. I sometimes have talked about this really great screenplay for Snapshot. My story that I didn't know. They got optioned by MGM. They had it out. The screenplay arrives, and it's just fantastic. Better than my story. Right? It's the only one I've gotten a screenplay better than my story. I'm like, what is this? Turns out he's a huge fan of Mistborn and stuff. And he's just like, well, I saw that there was a Sanderson property. I thought maybe if I do a really good job that I'll be able to meet Brandon. He's a little older than us. So he's like, our age group. So I went out and I'm like, why did you write such a good screenplay? So I go, number one, I like the story, but number two, Brandon. And so he's become a pretty good friend over the years. And he wrote The Meg. He will describe it as there's lots of different types of stories you want to write. And sometimes you want to write a story about a giant monstrous shark trying to eat Jason Statham. Yeah. And I think he actually wrote both of them. So
cool.
So what do you think? I went first last time. What do you think? What
about megalodons?
What's the likelihood of a megalodon? So we have to make this a cryptid scale. Let's say this.
Yeah.
A 10 doesn't mean it exists. Do you think it exists, right? A 10 is the most likely cryptid to exist, right?
Okay.
So a 10, you would have to give like a 10 probably to like some creature that you're pretty sure is out there somewhere. We just haven't discovered it yet. Whereas a 1 is no chance.
So for a megalodon, I'm looking up right now how big a megalodon actually is, because that is going to inform my answer.
I have one of their teeth.
A 4 to 7 meter long Pliocene shark. So here's the thing. Even as recently as 15 years ago, no one had ever actually seen a giant squid.
Yes.
We had like beaks and things. We assumed that they exist. We had relatively hard, solid evidence that they exist, but we'd never seen them. Now they're actually pretty common. The deep sea fishing that we do, the prevalence of cell phones and cameras, we've seen giant squids now. But the fact that there are things in the ocean that we can't prove exist is pretty much a verifiable fact.
Right.
And so is there some species of gargantuan shark out there somewhere? I think that that's plausible, if not probable.
I feel like this has to be, for me, we're starting off with two bangers, because this has to be the most likely cryptid that is not like, okay, there's different categories of cryptids. There's what you all think of when you say cryptid. Technically, cryptid can also include like the 3-toed spotted dwarf fawn that existed in this region for a long time, and we have pictures of, and probably was hunted to extinction, but there might still be some left that people still count as a cryptid. And like, that's a 10, right? We know that we have art of them. We know they existed in the 1800s. There's no photographs. Are they still alive? But just barring that, I think Megalodon's got to be
as close to
that as
real, as close to plausible as we can get.
This is like an 8 or a 9, right?
Yeah.
On the again, a 10 doesn't mean this exists. A 10, this is a grading on a curve. Do I think Megalodon exists? No. On our scale of what's most likely to exist, I'm going to give it an 8.
Going to give it an 8?
Yeah, I'm going to give it an 8.
I might go, I think 8's a good place. I was going to go higher, but I don't know. Like, is it the coelacanth? Is that the one that they thought was extinct and then they found one?
Yeah, like a coelacanth is a 10, the equivalent of a coelacanth right now. So maybe a Megalodon has to be a 9, but...
I don't know. I think a big giant shark needs to eat enough things that we may have come across it at some point, but if it's always eating things way down below the surface.
Yep, and they did exist. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these things we're going to get to, we don't have any sort of physical evidence of their ever existing. They did exist. I have one of their teeth. They existed, 45 million years ago or something like that. But yeah. So I'm going to go with an 8 just in case there's something that turns up more likely, but it could be revised to a 9. How badly do you want a Megalodon to exist?
I kind of don't want them to exist.
Okay.
I am content with there not being big, giant, hungry sea monsters.
Okay. See, I really like the idea of big, giant, hungry sea monsters. I was one of those shark kids that had all the shark books and things. So if I'm going to rank them, I would much rather Nessie exist as a giant sea monster. She seems nice.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go 9 for Megalodon. I want Megalodons.
Really? Badly?
I would love for Megalodons to get discovered.
Okay.
It would make my day.
Well, there we go.
All right. What else?
Here, let's go on. We're going into the terrestrial category now, which of course brings us alphabetically to the chupacabra.
Chupacabra. Okay. Yeah.
Chupacabra. This is, it means goat sucker in Spanish. Yep. It's some kind of vampire thing that is in the American Southwest.
Yep.
In Mexico, that area, the whole Sonoran Desert. What do I think about them?
Likelihood of existing. 3.
Yeah, I think it's pretty low.
I mean, this is highly populated areas. There's not even the deep forests of the Pacific Northwest to
allegedly hide in.
Yeah. They become a meme and they're the most memey of these, right? I would say. Oh, it's a chupacabra, right? Like, jackalope's probably the most memey, but I don't know if jackalope's going to be on there.
Jackalope might not be.
Yeah, because it's an intentional hoax. No one thinks that jackalopes are real, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Do you think it's higher than a 3 that a chupacabra exists?
A chupacabra exists?
Yeah.
No, I don't. Again, I think that we would have come across them.
That's going to be everything on this list, Dan.
I know. That's the thing. We live in an era when there's not a lot of mystery left on Earth. I think in underwater, that's why I'm like, there could totally be sea monsters out there.
I'm going to raise chupacabra to a 4 and tell you why.
Okay.
Chupacabra is small. Right? Like they're dog-sized?
Dog-sized or goat-sized. They need to be able to take down a goat.
Yeah. Like, it's not like, some Megalodon. Granted, there's a lot more to search, but, like some dog-like thing that could be mistaken for a dog that's shaped a little like a dog or like, don't they shape them a lot like weasels or something like that? How do they shape them?
I don't know. The picture in here looks like a Gorn from the old Star Trek episode.
They're like lizardy?
It looks very lizardy.
Huh. I'd always imagine a chupacabra, like, in my head, a chupacabra is like a red panda that's rabid and angry.
In Puerto Rico and in Hispanic America, it is generally described as a heavy creature, reptilian and alien-like, roughly the size of a small bear.
Okay. 2.
With a row of spines reaching from the neck to the base of the tail.
I'm stealing back my 4. It's going back to a 3. I don't think I'll go straight to a 2, but that description, like, I haven't been around that area, so I just have formed my own image of a chupacabra using no actual basis.
Yeah.
I'm going 3.
It says here that a lot of recent sightings in northern Mexico and southern U.S. have been verified as just some version of dog or wolf or coyote that's afflicted by mange, so it's scruffy looking and freaky.
You got to get yours. What are you going to give?
Yeah, if I have to put it on a scale, I'm going to put it at a 1.
Really?
But that's because I prefer the version of the chupacabra that can fly.
Okay. No, this is not your want. This is the how likely is it?
Well, that's the thing.
Oh, you're giving it a 1 likely.
I want chupacabras to be real.
Okay.
They're going to be very high up for me. This is an 8 or a 9.
Okay.
But my version of a chupacabra that I want to be real can fly, therefore is less likely to be.
Got it. Okay. So you're 8 or 9 on how much you want. How much do I don't really think about chupacabras, but that description is way cooler than I imagined them. So I'm gonna give them a 5 for how much I would like a chupacabra to exist.
Okay.
Like it doesn't really change the world if chupacabra actually exists. In the same way, like if we found Nessie, that's huge, right?
Yeah.
Dinosaur living. Another, basically an overgrown Gila monster, not quite as huge a deal.
Yeah, not quite as big of a thing.
Yeah.
All right, the Mongolian death worm.
I don't know the Mongolian.
You haven't heard of the Mongolian death worm.
What?
So Mongolian death worm is alleged to live in the Gobi Desert.
Okay.
The Mongolian name for it is Olgoi korkoi, which means large intestine worm.
Okay.
And it's basically a big, massive, slimy thing. Their existence has been studied not just by cryptid hunters, but by actual biologists who have determined that they're not real.
Okay.
Big old slimy sand worms.
Big old slimy sand, like they live in the sand?
They live in the sand. They live in the Gobi Desert.
Like actual dune sandworms?
They're not that big.
No, but they go under the sand and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh.
They live under the sand. They hide there.
Okay.
And then they come out and they eat stuff.
Well, that sounds cool.
It does sound. It sounds gross.
Gobi Desert also, who knows? Like scientists went to study. It's probably not a place with a high population, so you could see them existing there.
Yeah.
That whole description sounds like a 7 for me on feasibility.
On feasibility?
Yeah.
So they're one of the early paleontologists to search for this thing.
Yeah.
Talked to a group of Mongolian officials. This was in the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
And the exact quote here is, none of those present ever had seen the creature, but they all firmly believed in its existence and described it minutely. So, yeah, this is something that the people who live there firmly believe that it's real.
And
I don't know if that's
what about
still
you?
true of Mongolia. This is one that I definitely don't want to be real.
Okay.
Gross, slimy worms are definitely not something that I want to exist.
Sandworms?
If you could ride on them, sure.
Sandworms. If these existed, they would give us quite the leg up in genetically modifying actual sandworms.
Actual sandworms. They are allegedly the size of like a big snake, so like a boa constrictor or something. But yeah, if that's a real thing.
What number are you giving them for existence?
For existence?
Yeah.
I think that these are more likely. These are probably 3 or 4.
3 or 4
Maybe
is not
as
more
high
likely.
as a 5.
Okay.
More likely than the other things that I
Okay.
have consented
All right.
to give a number to.
All right. I'm going to give cool sandworm things also a 7 for my desire for them to
For
exist.
want?
Yeah.
Okay.
What we're finding is Brandon likes all of the cryptids. They're cool.
Yeah, Brandon wants all of the cryptids to be real.
Brandon doesn't believe in any of the cryptids, but Brandon wishes they were real.
I am skipping the thylacine. That's another coelacanth kind of thing. You've heard of that, right?
Yeah. So that's like one of our 10s, right? Like
Tasmanian tiger that maybe still exists somewhere. In fact, I think they've actually found them.
Yeah.
So anyway, now we're getting into the hominid category, which means we have the triple threat, and I'm going to just include them all together.
Okay.
Bigfoot, Yeti, and skunk ape.
Okay.
Skunk ape is basically Bigfoot who lives in the deep south.
Yep.
Georgia, Florida, that kind of
The least
swampy
likely
area.
one, I think.
I think the skunk ape is more likely
because do they go over into like the Everglades and stuff, or like
I don't know if they get that far south. They might.
You think skunk ape is more likely, really?
Than a Bigfoot?
Okay, let's rank which one's most likely in your opinion.
Which one is most likely
to exist? Is it Yeti, Sasquatch, or skunk ape?
I think the Yeti is more likely.
Most likely because the most remote.
It's the most remote, and it lives in an area of the world that already has apes.
Yeah, okay.
We don't really have them.
I agree with you, right?
Yeah.
It seems pretty clear-cut. So I would rank Sasquatch number 2 because I've been in the Pacific Northwest forests, and they are just, there's a certain ethereal, primal sense to them that could make me want to believe that something could live in there. Yeah.
Sasquatch, Bigfoot, definitely higher up on my want it to be real scale than the skunk ape is. Skunk ape, I don't know if this counts, but I 100% can believe that in the early days of American colonization, some chimpanzee got loose and just lived in the wilderness for a long time and stole people's food and stuff.
Yeah, but that's not a skunk ape. That's a chimpanzee, right? If the chupacabra is not real because it's actually a bear with mange, then the skunk ape is not real.
Can't be a chimpanzee.
Can't be a escaped chimpanzee.
Okay, fine.
Yep. Okay, so for in likelihood of existing, I still don't think I can give these really high scores because of the nature of how populated they are. Like I think Sasquatch is less likely than worm in the desert, right?
For sure.
And so, but maybe more likely than giant lizard. And so I'm going to go with Sasquatch, I'm going to go with a 5.
A 5 for Sasquatch?
Yes. And I'm going to go up to a 6 for Yeti. And I'm going to go down to a 4 for skunk ape.
Okay, this being a cryptid scale,
yes,
which again is not a scale from obviously fake to obviously real.
Yes.
I'll agree with your 6 for Yeti.
Okay.
I would put Sasquatch further down. Maybe let a 4 instead of a 5.
Okay.
If we're going to be that granular. Skunk ape, probably around the same thing.
The most the time of my life where I was most willing to maybe believe in Sasquatch was when I read the book by the University of Idaho professor. What's his name? Look this up for us, Donald, if you can.
Will do.
Moshe edited it.
Yeah.
And he sent me a copy, and I read it, and I'm like, this is a well-written, scholarly look of about the existence of Sasquatch. And it was like, what is that famous line from the Bible? Almost you make me...
Almost thou persuadest me to be a Bigfootian.
Yes, almost thou persuadest me to be a Bigfootian. That's the closest I've gotten.
Does Jeffrey Meldrum sound familiar?
That is him.
Okay.
Yep. He wrote a good book.
This is, I swear we've talked about this, but in case you haven't seen that episode, when Brandon and I first met Moshe, who was to become our editor, this was what he talked about. Kind of our line was, hey, so what are you working on? And we used that on lots of people. And Moshe was working on this Bigfoot book and talked about it for 45 minutes.
Let's give credit. He also was working on Lee Modesitt's books, which is part of why I thought he might be a good match for fantasy.
That is true.
And so he had done a lot of work on Lee Modesitt, but this was the most recent thing he'd done. And he was very excited
to talk about.
That and a comedy about Vietnam. A comedic Vietnam memoir.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. Were two of the books that he had worked on, as well as Lee Modesitt's epic fantasies. So yeah. Much my desire for Bigfoot. For all three of these, I would put these in the same number for how much I want them to exist. Not as much as I want a sandworm.
I would put them higher.
Yeah.
Like, there's something about Yeti and Bigfoot which are so obviously not real that there's some maybe impish part of me that wants them to be real just to prove people wrong.
Oh, that's a good point.
No,
that's a real good point.
Like,
but
I would
here's the
love
problem, Dan.
for Yeti to be real.
If Yeti's real, how much fuel does that give to more dangerous conspiracy theories? If we find out Yeti's real, are people like, well, flat Earth, right? Is that?
Well, now that Yeti's real, obviously the world is hollow.
I mean,
and there's also lizard men.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
you're joking, but I think that if a major, long debunked by science entity like Bigfoot were real, that it would increase
It would, but I kind of see that already.
Yeah.
Like Flat Earth is the first place you went.
Yeah.
We had thought that was long weeded out of the human population, and yet there's a growing movement of flat earthers, and so those people are already around.
Okay.
I don't mind if we give them a little
If
bit
you
of
give
fuel.
them, if you give them,
It's a good trade-off.
okay.
On the one
All right.
hand, I get a Yeti.
I'm gonna move up to an 8. I was gonna give a 6.
Okay.
Move up to an 8 because of you.
I'm going to put both Yeti and Bigfoot
At a 10.
at a 10.
At a 10.
I would love it if they were real. Just absolutely love it.
I have to ask. This is the first time I've ever heard of this creature. How big is the skunk man myth?
The skunk ape is smaller than Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why I think it is likely to be like a chimpanzee or a escaped ape of some kind.
But I've heard of that when I haven't heard of the Mongolian death worm. And so it's at least more in the public consciousness than the death worm.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Yeah.
we're almost out of time. Is there like one more, or are we good?
Well, you
we didn't
mentioned
do
it,
Mothman.
so
We didn't
let's do it. The
yeah.
next two are Jersey Devil and Mothman.
Yeah.
And since you mentioned New Jersey,
Yeah, we have
Jersey
to do
Devil.
Jersey Devil.
The creature is often described as a flying biped with hooves.
Yep.
But there are many variations. The common description is that of a bipedal kangaroo-like or wyvern-like creature.
Uh-huh.
And I love that it just puts those in the same phrase because those two look nothing like each other.
So, Jersey Devil and Mothman, I'll kind of lump together. These are creepypasta before creepypasta existed, right?
Mothman especially.
Yeah. They both exist to be stories to scare people. And all the stuff about the Jersey Devil I read is always kind of associated with this. Wouldn't it be spooky if? I think these are more Slender Man, even though Slender Man was obviously invented. These are, I think, things that people invented around campfires in order to scare each other.
Well, and Mothman in particular
Yeah.
was almost created whole cloth by a journalist.
Yeah.
Because he wanted a spooky story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody writes something about Mothman or makes an adaptation of Mothman, they are adapting his book. They are not adapting local legends.
Like there's no, like with Sasquatch, you're like, there could be still a breeding population of something that, like, with Jersey Devil, it's just like, hey, it's an actual devil. We're not saying it's actually a devil, but it's a devil. It's a religious mythological figure that we use. So I'm giving them both a 1.
A 1 in plausibility.
Plausibility. Yeah. I don't think they were even, I don't think anyone who created them really created them to be real. You know what I'm saying? And I will split Jersey Devil for wanting to exist. I also want to be a 1. This is like a monstrous religious figure that, you know, I don't want there to be an actual demon wandering around New Jersey. Mothman is cooler, right?
Yeah.
Mothman is cool enough to be like a 4 or a 5 for me, but Jersey Devil's 1.
See, I'd put Jersey Devil a little higher on plausibility.
Would you?
Just because I don't know. This falls into the category of me wanting it to be real, even if it isn't. But yeah, Mothman a 1. I would give Mothman a 0 in plausibility, just because that one guy made it up. But I don't know. Jersey
Honorary
Devils are
0.
cool. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, we are basically out of time.
Is Ben real?